بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. الحمد لله. Our look at some of the sets of verses related to the qualities of those beloved to Allah. And then last week we looked at a description of the true believer, right? Who encompasses the qualities beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the description of Al-Hasan al-Basri. And then and he said at the end, this is how the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were, because he instilled those virtues in them. Now, we wanted to look today at over the next couple of weeks, at a surah that's very significant because it talks about what the Qur'an is calling us to. What the Qur'an is calling us to. And this is Surat al-Naba. Right? And Surat al-Naba, of course, it begins Amma yatasa'alun. And what does Surat al-Naba open? Surat Amma yatasa'alun, it opens Juz Amma. Right? What is Juz Amma? The 30th Juz. Right? So it opens the final 30th of the Qur'an. And this surah has a number of it has a rhetorical power in its address. Amma yatasa'alun. What are they asking each other about? عن النبأ العظيم. About that great news. Right? And it talks about two principal themes. One of which is the reality of the hereafter. Right? The reality of the hereafter. And number two, a reminder of blessings. And there's a connection between the two. The reality of the hereafter and its consequences. And number two, a recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. Why? Because the message is that there is a hereafter. Its consequences are grave. Take it seriously. One, because of avoiding its harmful consequences, and number two, consider what you are blessed with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes us through a whole series of blessings, so to have gratitude. So this surah fulfills two great aspects of, directly, two central aims of guidance, which are, number one, to inculcate consciousness of the hereafter, and number two, to inculcate gratitude, because gratitude is what drives slavehood. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, أَفَلْ أَكُنُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a servant who is truly grateful? Because you are driven to serving Allah by having gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And how to have gratitude? Through repeated reminders of divine favor. So let's look at this surah. Now, so these are the two principal themes, right? Reminders of the hereafter and gratitude. But within it, there are reminders of the inimitability of the Qur'an. Right? The inimitability of the Qur'an. Right? This surah contains in its stylistic structure, in the tone of its address, and a number of other factors, almost as if it is a distilling of the arguments for the inimitability of the Qur'an. Right? Which is significant. Why would you pay attention to this reminder? So it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Amma yatasa'alun. What are they asking one another about? Anil Naba al-Azim. About the great news. What is al-Naba al-Azim? It's one of the names of the Qur'an. Right? About the great news. The Naba is a report that comes from an esteemed place. Right? A Naba. And the one who receives a Naba is a prophet. That's what they're called. Al-Nabi. Nabi, you can say Nabi or Nabi with the Hamza at the end. Nabi with the Hamza at the end. Because Al-Nabi, man yunba ilayhi. A prophet is one who receives a great message, right? Which is called Naba, right? Al-Naba al-Azim, about the tremendous news, right? Amma yatasa'alun. Of course, this puts a context, right? That in the context of revelation, this comes addressing the Quraysh. What are they asking each other about? And of course, they were trying to hide the fact that they were discussing it amongst themselves, right? They were just sort of, we have nothing to do with this. Right? Once the Prophet ﷺ made his message public, they try to play it cool, right? Like, who is he anyways, right? Or they say, he's just this way, that. But amongst themselves, privately, they're having a lot of debates. Even the Quraysh themselves weren't aware that the leaders of Quraysh were arguing amongst each other in their private gatherings, of which those of them who became Muslim admitted to after. But Allah called them out on that before it was known that they were debating amongst each other about it. They said, who is he? Did he learn this? Is he mad? Is he a magician? Did he, is he just brilliant? Right? What are they asking each other about? Right? Anil Naba al-Azim, about the tremendous news. Right? So, now, this has a contextual, right, meaning, right, regarding the people of Mecca, right? Because they were asking each other about it. Later, they were challenging the Prophet ﷺ about it. But also, this is a wider call to creation, right? That what are you wondering about, right? What are you wondering about, right? And that, so there's a contextual meaning, which is what were the people of Mecca asking each other about? They're asking each other about al-Naba al-Azim, about this you can say the Naba, the great news or the great revelation, because it came, right? It was because the Naba is what makes the prophet a prophet, right? So about the great revelation. But there's a broader meaning, right? That it is that what are you asking about? Like, what are you wondering about in life? And what are the questions that are troubling you? Either the big questions of life, of existence, right? There's they say there's 4 or 5 fundamental questions. Who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? What am I supposed to do? What's going to happen after? Right? Those very practical, fundamental questions of life. Or the bigger question, like, who am I? Who created me? Who is my Lord? What is my purpose? All these kinds of fundamental questions. What are they asking themselves about? Because someone can be either conscious that being alive on a spinning little globe in this great universe, you should be asking, like, what's going on? Okay? And everything that they're asking about is there in al-Naba al-Azim, in the great news. Right? الذي هم فيه مختلفون, regarding which they are amongst them in disagreement. Right? Regarding which, verse 3, الذي هم فيه مختلفون, regarding which they are in disagreement with one another. So specifically about Quraysh, because some of them were denying it absolutely. Just others had doubts. Some were attracted to it. Several of the Sahaba actually hid behind the drapings of the Kaaba several times to catch the Prophet ﷺ reciting it at night. Because he'd go in the quiet of the night and pray by the Kaaba. And several times they bumped into each other behind the drapings of the Kaaba. They're trying to be sneaky about it, right? Because they're attracted to it, right? Regarding which they are amongst themselves in disagreement. Right? Or, so this is, they're in disagreement about the great revelation, al-Naba al-Azim. Another interpretation, the questions regarding which they are in disagreement. They don't know the answers with clarity. And people wonder. Like, people sit down. Now people discuss these big questions less, but someone sits down even amongst themselves and wondering, so what is the answer of life? One could be disagreeing with others or disagreeing within oneself. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ, regarding which they are in disagreement with. They have different answers to. Right? Either the questions or the revelation, regarding which they are in disagreement with. The most obvious meaning is it relates to the revelation itself. They're in disagreement about it. Is it true or not? Is it from Allah or not? How do we respond to it? Or what are they asking themselves about? Those questions regarding which they are in disagreement about. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forwards the whole conversation. Right? They're arguing about the Qur'an, which is answering these fundamental questions of life. Right? Huda lil muttaqeen, it is complete guidance for those of mindfulness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 4, كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ, no indeed, they'll come to know. Okay? And this is part of the rhetorical power of the surah, right? ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ, then indeed they will come to know. Right? Either by, how will they come to know? Right? And this stylistically is called rada, right? This is a stopping. No, indeed. Right? They'll come to know. Right? That it'll become evident to them on a day when it's undeniable. Right? So Allah said they'll come to know. Indeed, they will come to know. Now, no one but the Lord of the worlds can speak like this. So what are they asking about? They'll have the answer one day. Like, you don't establish an argument with others in this way. Why? Because you realize, like, you have to prove your point. The Lord of the heavens doesn't have to do that. But rather, he says, they'll come to know. He pins it with that, and then establishes why you should recognize him and be grateful to him. You will come to know. When? In the hereafter. But the mercy, so this is majesty, right? This majesty. No, they will come to know. Should someone who listens to this, كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ, no, they will come to know. They would have a sense of awe, like, oh my God. It's almost like a threat. Well, it is a threat. Right? But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pins that statement in verses 4 and 5. كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ, no, indeed, they will come to know. ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ, then Indeed, they will come to know, right? And this thumma is re-emphasizing that point. And some said the first, they will come to know, meaning at the point when they're resurrected, the ba'ath. And the second is when there's the reckoning. Right? Because when you're resurrected, you know that the hereafter was true. And the second is when reckoning happens, you know what your consequences are. That's one of the reasons. Ibn Kamal Basha, he has a treatise on Surat al-Naba. He says that this is one of the interpretations, right? Or they will come to know at the point of death, and then they'll come to know, secondly, when they enter their graves, because the grave is already a precursor of your eternal seat. Your grave is your grave, whether it's an actual grave or even if someone was scattered, they shredded them. The shocking percentage of Brits are cremating themselves. Right? It's a really high percentage. North Americans are a lot more conservative, especially Americans. Like you'd expect, Americans are like, in the West, they're one of the most conservative countries, right? Shocking percentage of non-Muslim Brits are cremating themselves. I used to wonder why so many British Muslims are asking questions about cremation, but not allowed, of course. So at the point when you enter the grave is connected either to your seat in heaven or your pit in hell. Right? But they will come to know. And indeed, they will come to know. And this has عَمَّا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ. What are they asking each other about? Right? About that great news, regarding which they have much disagreement. Ikhtilaf can also be like that. A state of disagreement is a state of doubt, regarding which they are in doubt. Right? And this applies to people as groups, but also it can apply by way of very direct allusion to oneself. What are they wondering about in life, right? That is the subject matter of the great news, right? That's how it also relates to us. What are you wondering about in life, right? Every question you have, its answer is in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every fundamental question you have. Right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks a rhetorical question in verse 6. This is Surat al-Naba. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا. Did we not make the earth, right? Did we not make the earth accessible? So mihada is that which is accessible. Al-muhayya litasarruf, that which is made easy to deal with, right? Mihad is also that which has been flattened, right? But mihad is that which has been made accessible, right? Imagine like how difficult was it to get here, right? Like even if there weren't roads and stuff, like the earth is generally, it's characterized by flatness, by accessibility, right? The ground is even when there's snow, you step, there's ground, right? So have we not made this earth accessible, right? Right? And this is where there's of course a challenge in translation, right? Some people translate mihada, because mihad, that which is accessible and facilitated, is also that which is flat. There's not an argument for a flat earth theory. Some people say, look, the Qur'an says the earth is mihad. Okay, hold on, what is mihad? Mahada, right, means to prepare something. Right? Right? That which is made accessible to us. Right? Without it being full of harms. You step on the ground, it stays. If I ask you, see, I didn't see you last week. So, oh, I was walking here, I stepped on the ground, and I ended up 5,700 feet under the ground, and I had to dig myself back out. Right? So have we not made this earth accessible to you? Right? Right? Without harm. Right? Right? And this is a major reminder. All the facilitations on earth fall. Have we not made it a mahd? And a mahd is also like the infant's cot. Right? Like we're coddled here. Right? Like it's made easy and accessible and comfortable for you. Right? We could have been thrown off in a planet where there is no comfort. Right? It could be complete chaos. Did we not make the earth accessible, comfortable? Right? Right? So Ibn Kamal Basha says, أي إنها لكم كالمهد للصبي. This earth for you is like the cot for the infant. Okay? And you're spoiled there. Okay? Right? Right? We don't make it accessible. وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا. And we did not make the mountains like pegs. Right? Like pegs. Right? And of course, the mountains fulfill great purposes in terms of the geography of the earth, right? And even practically for people, right? That because of the mountains, people would live under the shade of the mountains, and they would grow certain crops on the mountain sides. They live in the valleys. The mountains would facilitate the coming of rain, all kinds of, the snow from the mountains would turn into springs, etc. They're like pegs for the earth. People would also pegs for the earth insofar as people would be guided by the mountains, as in the old days, as passageways. Right? And there's many other wisdoms in it. Right? And this is part of it being like a mahd. And they will make the earth a place of comfort and ease for you, and place in it mountains as pegs. And they analyze this also, geographically, etc. Is that what is meant? Allah knows best. It says, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا. Verse 7, وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا. And the mountains as pegs. وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. Right? And did we not create you in pairs? Right? Right? Male and female, with all the wisdoms, whether at the physical level, we created you in a manner in which there's preservation for you. Right? And there are لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may find serenity therein. Right? With all the wisdoms and we created you, in pairs, the male and the female, the husband and the wife. But we created you in pairs. And there's a broader meaning. We created you that everything in existence has this duality to it. We created you in pairs. There's night and day and good and bad and right and wrong. All of these are pairs. But the most direct meaning is, do not create you as male and female. Right? 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 And there's a interpretation of it being every kind of duality, right? 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 And this is mentioned by Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, right? Every kind of duality. We made you in contrast, right? So, there is the ugly and the beautiful, the tall and the short, right? The rich and the poor, the easy and the difficult. There's all these contrasts. There's ease and difficulty, joy and sadness. خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. There is these contrasts, right? And right. خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا. And did we not make your sleep a rest, right? And subat, right, is a time for subat is a time for complete rest, right? Right? And there's a relationship between subat and the idea of, because Arabic and you could say the Jews refer to the Sabbath. There is a lexical relationship between the two terms. The idea of the notion of a time for rest. Right? Do not make your sleep a time of rest, right? Where the outward movement stops and your senses largely pause, right? So that the animal capacities within one can rejuvenate, right? And the wisdom in that, like you have needs, you fulfill them during the day. There's a time then to rest, but the rest, a rest and a comfort. And we made your night. There's nothing about the night that should give you rest, but do you not recognize wisdom in creation, right? And he says, وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. And we made the night an envelopment. Libas literally is a garment, right? We not make the night a cover, right? With its darkness, right? That the time of rest is facilitated by the darkness of the night. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. We make the night a garment. And that is it's almost like the bed sheet that facilitates you to sleep. And there's significant difference between sleeping in the dark and sleeping with significant light on, because you won't have complete comfort. And there's a great divine wisdom in that. And of course, in that there's people who realize that there's a wisdom in, number one, sleeping at night. There's many indications of that in the Qur'an, right? Of sleep in night being both more natural, but also more fulfilling of divine wisdom in the norms that He has created. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. And made the night a garment, right? So that sleep itself has been made a rest, right? And the night a garment, which a covering that covers it. And this all indicates the mercy of the All-Merciful in the way things are. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. This is verse number 10. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. And we've made the day a time for seeking your living. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Right? We've made the day a time for seeking your worldly needs. The ma'ash is that which you seek your worldly needs towards. Right? The al-aish, that which you live by. That the ma'ash is a means of seeking your living, of seeking those means by which you can live a good life. And we made the day a time for seeking your living. If you consider all the means between when you wake up and when you go to your work, everything that is facilitated, could you have aligned all those things yourself? Right? I mean, human civilization itself is a tremendous mercy. You look at the level of complexity of everything that between you and getting downtown, and you just consider the distance. Right? Could you comfortably, you work downtown? Where do you work?
I just finished school.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you work? Airport. Yeah. So between your home and the airport, imagine if you just have to walk there. Okay? All all the means and the clothing and this, but all the means that are facilitated for you to be able to seek your living. And we made the day, وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارِ, we made the day a ma'asha, a time for seeking your living. Okay? Right? And also a time for seeking one's living because it's been made so facilitated. The day is typically, the general case, is that the sun is up, it's bright and so on. There's so many components for it to be fit for you now to go out and about to seek your worldly interests. Okay? And that's just the way things are. The way things are point to one who made them the way they are. And that's why it keeps repeating, وَجَعَلْنَا, and we made. Right? وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا, we made. Right? And that's why this expression keeps getting repeated. Right? Verse 6, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ, did we not make the earth accessible, comfortable? Right? And did we not create you in pairs? And وَجَعَلْنَا, and we made your sleep a time for rest. And we made the night a covering, a comfortable covering. Right? وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ, and we made, right? And each of these are repeated because all these phenomena around us, what are they pointing to? Right? What are they pointing to? Right? And it's a reminder of blessings, but also a reminder this is nothing but signs. That when you look at the earth, do you look at the earth or do you look at the fact that consider its nature and you see that هذا بجعل الله, this is, creation points to the creator. If my cup was empty and it's full, it would point to the fact that somebody filled it. Right? The cup's full, that's just the way it is. Every effect has a cause. Right? Every effect has a cause. This is why Allah reminds us of all these blessings about created phenomena, but their characteristics. Consider how they are. And what is it pointing to? Creation points to the creator. Every effect is begging for a cause. Right? Right? Every effect is begging for a cause. Right? Right? And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using the expression وَجَعَلْنَا, and we made, also has another indication, right? Which is وَجَعَلْنَا, we made, that consider these things in of itself. Any consideration that a thing could have made itself is absurd. Right? Things cannot create themselves from nothing. Saying that everything created another thing, then you're either affirming infinite regress, which is either admission that you don't know, because you just put off the first cause, right? Because infinite regress is absurd, and we can't go into it here. But every phenomenon in creation points to the reality that it has no ability in itself. And it's created by another thing that doesn't have any ability or power in itself. All of it is pointing to the fact that there is a ja'il. There's one who made things, who fashioned things. And it could only be Allah, because the things themselves, all of them, are weak, needy, and perishing. Right? وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا, and we made the day a time for seeking your provision, a time for living. وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا, and we built above you 7 formidable heavens. سَبْعًا شِدَادًا, 7 shidad here, formidable heavens. They're formidable because the Ibn Kamal Basha, who was a great Ottoman, one of the greatest of the Ottoman scholars, and he died in the year 940 after the Hijrah, about 500 years ago, 501 years ago. He points out that وَجَعَلْنَا فَوْقَهُمْ سَبْعًا, we placed above you 7 that are formidable, right? And these are the heavens. You have the material heavens, and then there's the realms beyond that. And they're formidable at many levels, because even the sama'ud dunya, and they differ, is the earth itself, one sama is one heaven, and then the universe, the material universe, the second, or just our universe itself is just one of the 7 heavens. We don't know, right? But even if you consider one of the aspects of being shadid, of it being formidable, is that there is this precise order to it that indicates ghayatul ihkam, the absolute limits of perfection, right? In the orbit of things and the order of everything in the universe, right? There is quwwatul khalq al-muhkam, right? The strength of creation that is in perfect order, right? So it's formidable, right? And not just at any instant. You look at order at an instant and say, wow, but it's been this way from time, for us, almost immeasurable, right? And even the change that is taking place in it, right, is following precise order, right? بنينا فوقهم سبعا, and we built, okay? And bina, the word bina is to build with order, with firmness and purpose, right? And we built over you 7 formidable, and Allah does not name what are the 7. It's like, what can you understand about them? Because even the material universe, you try to conceive of its size, it's beyond our, it's almost beyond our reckoning, and that's just one of the 7 heavens. Okay, so بَنِينَ فَوْقَهُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا, but of formidable characteristics. وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا, and we made a light-giving lamp. Right? وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا. Right? And this is a description of the sun. And we made, a literally sirajan wahaja, right? So it's literally, a light giving and warmth giving sun, right? A siraj, literally a radiant lamp, but it's not, the lamp is not meant here. Right? وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا, we made a light that gives heat. The wahaj, okay? مُضِيئًا وَقَادًا, an illuminating source of heat. Because there would be no life without the sun. We just, we probably want a little more of it these days, but right? Were it not for the heat of the sun, the light from the sun and the heat from the sun, nothing would grow to begin with. وَجَعَلْنَا, and we made the sun, right? And there's almost one of the tafsir is وَجَعَلْنَا الشَّمْسَ سِرَاجًا وَهَاجًا, and we made the sun for you as a siraj, which is a lamp. It gives light. And wahaj, it gives heat, right? And what's meant is the sun. Right? And the order in it. Were we much closer to the sun, we just burn. And the light would be too intense. And if we're slightly further away, it'd just be way too cold. Right? Right? We made, right? Right? And the ja'al, did we not make it? There's implication. Ja'al is something made for you, right? Right? So there's a call here to gratitude in each of these. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا. And we sent down from the pressed clouds water that gushes down. لِنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا وَنَبَاتًا. So that we can bring forth by it grains and crop. So, right? And we sent down from من المعصرات, from the pregnant clouds, the full clouds, water that gushes down. Right? And if one looks just at the marvel of cloud formation and also the role of cloud formation, right? It's amazing, and all of these things should make us reflect on the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? In this order, because in anything else in life, we wouldn't believe that it just chance, right? In any one phenomenon, what's this? Someone just threw some letters together and became a book. We wouldn't believe, except chance on one single object, that it just happened to become like this, right? But there are people who are willing to accept that at a greater level, right? Water that gushes forth, right? Right? And there's a wisdom in it, right? Because water just doesn't come out just for one. The obvious thing, water comes down, you drink it, etc. لِنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا, so we can bring forth by it. But of course, this also, for a believer, it's pointing to the reality of causality in creation, which is that Allah is the creator of both cause and effect. Right? Because it is not the rain that causes, it's not the means that is the effective cause for the result. Allah is the creator of the means, like the water from the rain, and Allah is the creator of the effect, because He is the creator of all causes and the effector of all effects. And a reflection on the reality of creation, because each of them is created, needy, dependent, bereft of any ability or power in of itself, even for itself, let alone to have an effect on another. Right? لِنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا وَنَبَاتًا, so that we can bring forth by it. Right? Can bring forth by it. Right? Right? And by it meaning عند اقتران السبب والمسبب, when the cause and the effect come together. عادة, normally. But it is Allah who's making both happen. It's also called, do not be veiled by this apparent relationship between causes and effects, because all of these are affirming that we are needy and dependent. Right? Right? Grains, right, like wheat and barley and habban, grains and crop. وَجَنَّاتٍ أَلْفَافًا, right? And gardens, gathered together, right? 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 Like orchards. Right? gardens, that are fertile. Right? And then if you consider, just reflect on how gardens or orchards form and all that they have and the fruits that come forth from that. There are numerous wisdoms in it, right? And that's why it's been it's recommended to walk on earth with reflection, right? But to reflect on the meanings of things. Right? So this part of the surah is a reminder of all these things. Did we not make all of these things? How do you realize that? It's a call to reflect on creation, right? But these verses, right, from verse 6, Alam naj'al, did we not make? From verse 6 to verse 16, right? There's repeated mention of did we not make? Did we not send down? Right? All of these are calling us to reflect both. There's multiple levels of reflection, but consider creation, consider the meaning in the way things are. And does that, the created thing itself not point to a creator? And does the order and wisdom and benefit in it not point to one who is wise and able? So this is sort of as I said, they will come to know, truly they'll come to know. So there's an opportunity to reflect on all of this. There's 10 verses calling them to reflect, to realize that creation needs a creator, that creator is wise and merciful. And creation, if someone reflected on creation, there's two ways to look at creation, right? A materialist look at creation, if you reflect, you should be miserable. So, going to die and all of this is going to come to nothing. That's pretty depressing. Okay? A believer, were they to reflect on creation, they would be filled with gratitude, but with hope. Why? Because everything in creation is affirming the encompassing mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the existential level. All of it. Right? Right. Even, like, for example, I used to wonder that, how come kids don't get hurt more? But it's just the way kids are, if you look at their body to surface area ratio, their weight to surface area ratio, if a child falls from 3 feet and you fall from 3 feet, the force of the impact for you is much higher than the force of impact for the child. Because they're just, but there's a wisdom, the child's weaker, but there's amazing subtle wisdom, because they're less able to fend for themselves, right? There's all this lutf, the subtle graces of Allah surrounding everything. When you turn a corner in a car, right? Cars coming from both sides. Don't overanalyze it, because you can start getting afraid. And even a simple corner, just consider all the things that are in balance for you just not to smash into each other. Like, I've many times just said, okay, if that didn't work, I'd be completely content to die. But it does work, so I'm very grateful that it works. But also that Allah has created balance in people. Right? Imagine if we had ticks. So we're turning your spouse is driving, they're driving, what if it just went like that? They just had a muscle spasm. Right? All these things, it's telling us about the Creator and His mercy. Right? So after all these reminders, right, of the Creator, to reflect on, or reflecting on the creation and the benefit in creation, pointing to His wisdom and His mercy. So in that, of course, is an implicit call that there's a great news that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has come with. They will come to know. Truly, they'll come to know. There's an opportunity. Come to know it now through reflection. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in verse 17, this is Surat al-Naba, verse 17, إِنَّ يَوْمَ الْفَصْلِ كَانَ مِيقَاتًا. Truly, the day of reckoning is a promised time, has a set time. Okay? Truly, the day of reckoning, Yawm al-Fasl, the day when things will be made clear, right? كان ميقاتا is a set time, or is our appointed time. That's when you'll come to know. The miqat means it's a set time, but that's the time, that's the appointed time, right? That's when you will come to know. But it's in your interest to learn through reflection and consideration before you behold the reality when you can no longer do anything about it. يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا. On the day when the trumpet will be blown, so you will come. You'll come forth in groups. Right? When the trumpet is blown, and you will come. فَتَأْتُونَ. You will come. Where will you come to? This is part of the rhetorical eloquence of the Qur'an. You will come in groups. Of course, you'll come forth, meaning from your graves to the gathering place. This is part of the rhetorical eloquence of the Qur'an. You'll come. And also, of course, in play, you'll come to us, right? Because all along we have been in charge. You'll come. Afwaj and fawj is in groups that are gathered, that are going forth in a direction. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاء فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. Right? And when the skies open forth, so they become doors. Right? Right? وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. The skies are opened and they become doors. Why? Because right now there's a separation between the material worlds and the spiritual worlds. But the sky, which also covers over what is beyond it, right? From the material worlds to the spiritual worlds, and beyond. When the sky وَفُتِحَتِ and the sky is opened. And because we think as if this universe are the sama'ud dunya, this material world has some kind of permanence, but the sky is open. It is open. Like what do you open? You open a door. That's all there is. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاء. The sky is opened. Who opened it? The one who created it, the one who sustained it. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاء فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. And it becomes like doors. Because then what happens then? Then the angels come down. Right? Because then when the trumpet is blown, khalas, the material world is over. Now the material and the spiritual become manifest. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاء. And the sky is opened. فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. So it becomes as doors. And of course, elsewhere in the Qur'an, so we're looking at Surat al-Naba, but in Surat al-Furqan, so Imam Ibn Kamal Basha, in his tafsir of Surat Naba, points to, the fact that it's the angels that come through the doors that the sky just opens up as if it's doors. It's the angels that go through, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَوْمَ تَشَقَّقُ السَّمَاء. But the day when the sky is, opened up, right? That openings appear in the sky. بالغمام ونزل الملائكة, and the angels are made to come down. تنزيلا, with clear descent. فكانت أبوابا. Okay. وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا. Right? And the mountains are scattered. Right? Sayr is to make something journey. Right? Right? وسيرت الجبال. Right? The mountains are scattered. So they become فكانت سرابا. So they become like a mirage. Right? They just vanish. Right? Right? So the illusion of permanence, intangible, material, created things, which we're always affirming that we are nothing but a mirage. Right? Right? Because then the reality of the mirage reality of things becomes becomes clear. وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا. Right? And the mountains are scattered, and it's worse said فكانت. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rhetorical, right, tense is that it is expressed as though it's to express the fact that it's a done deal. It's put in the past tense. So they were, right? But, right? وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالِ. When that happens, the mountains are made to do this, so they were like that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us of it from after the fact. And why? Because time does not relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? He's telling us what will happen from after it has happened, because He's the Lord of time. Okay? So He's taking us, like if you sort of zoom out, taking us that the day of fasl, the day of separation, is a promised time. And what's going to happen there? The day when the trumpet is blown and you'll come in groups and the sky is opened. فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. And it was. فَكَانَتْ. It is, but it was doors. And the mountains are scattered, and they're scattered in the air like dust. And they become as if a mere mirage. They were just illusionary. Right? فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. This is why Shaykh Ahmad al-Alawi, one of the great scholars of the 20th century poem, says, لا ترضى بغير الله حبة. Do not be content with other than Allah as the object of your love. كل شيء دونه سراب. Because everything besides Him is a mere mirage. The mirage reality of created things, the illusion of its permanence. The mountain looks so tangible, and everything else for us looks so tangible. But what is its intrinsic reality? Its intrinsic reality is that it's dependent. من لا وجود لذاته من ذاته فوجوده لولاه عين محال. Anything that does not have existence for itself, from itself, then its existence, were it not for Him, for Allah, the Khaliq, the Ja'il, the Creator, the Maker, would be absurdity itself. None of this exists by itself. Saying, well, this was made by this, just putting off the fact. So who made that? Who made that? Keep going. Like, I'm not going to tire. Just keep at it. We're still affirming that creation needs a creator. That creator could only be one. Right? It was a mere mirage. Right? So the scholars of the spiritual path said this mirage reality that we behold of the mountains On that day, that's the reality of everything in creation. لا ترضى بغير الله حبة كل شيء دونه سراب. Do not be content with other than Allah as the object of your love, for everything besides Him is but a mirage. You think that it's very real, but its apparent reality is a veil from its true reality of utter neediness to Allah. The reality of everything is saying, do not be deluded by our forms, realize our meaning, that we are glorifying the oneness of Allah. That there's nothing whatsoever, as Allah tells in the Qur'an, in heavens or in the earth, except that it glorifies the praises of Allah. فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. So it is a mere mirage. So this is the description of the mountains, right, on that day. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us next about the consequence, right? He tells us subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّ جَهَنَّمَ كَانَتْ مِرْصَادًا لِلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا. Truly, hell was ever in waiting. Truly, hell was ever in waiting. There's a number of texts in the Qur'an and the Sunnah from which the ulama mention a subtle point, that heaven exists right now. Okay? And hell exists right now. And there's multiple proofs, one of which is verse 21 of Surat al-Naba, which we've been looking at. Inna jahannama kanat mirsada. Truly hell was ever in waiting. Right? It's real. It's not like something that may be out there. لِلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا. For transgressors as their destination. Right? For transgressors, right? Those who go beyond limits. For wrongdoers, their resting place. لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا. They'll dwell therein for time after time. Right? Ahqab is time beyond reckoning. لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا. They will not taste there any coolness. Right? It's not literally, bard is cold, but all they will experience there is intense heat. They'll experience there no coolness, meaning no respite. Because if you get into a really hot shower, like really hot, like you crank it, you go there, after a few moments, you don't feel the heat quite so much, right? Or in a cold shower, you jump into the cold shower, right? It's like, I went on a cricket tour of southern Spain. I was staying with a Punjabi friend of mine, and he decided to take a shower first before going to sleep. And he started screaming all kinds of stuff in Punjabi. I didn't know he actually spoke so much Punjabi. It was mainly curses. And then he started saying, I'm a Punjabi lion of God knows what class. And I'm like, what's going on? And the reason was that the water was so freezing cold. And so we had cold showers for 2 days, and someone just told us, by the way, there's an on-off switch. But it wasn't labeled. Like, we don't know there's a switch, right? But you feel respite, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they'll لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا. They'll dwell therein for time immemorial, a time beyond time. They will لَا يَذُوقُونَ فِيهَا بَرْدًا. They will not even taste coolness, nor drink. It's not that they'll have it, they won't even have the taste of it. Okay? Because you're the first of experience, the first contact with your senses is a taste. You haven't, you put something in your mouth, you taste it. That's the first. They will not even begin to experience coolness nor drink, meaning they will not have any experience of respite nor any comfort from their agony. And the disbeliever, the one who rejects, is being told, you're being warned. So take heed. This is not a joke. إِلَّا حَمِيمًا وَغَسَّاقًا. Right? Except for the most vile of nourishment and drink. جَزَاءً وِفَاقًا. A fitting recompense. Right? Al-jaza' min jins al-amal. A reward is in accordance with the action. Right? And actions are by their intention. Some people say, how come someone will be punished for so long? Because they only lived a number of years. Because you are, just as you are rewarded for your intention, you are punished for your intention. Right? Now, from Allah's generosity, He multiplies the reward of good intentions tenfold. Good intentions that translate or would have translated into good actions. He's rewarded tenfold to many times thereof. From Allah's mercy is that the sinful action or the sinful intention is only rewarded, is only punished onefold. But the intention, nobody intended, I'm just going to commit this sin once and that's it, and never again. Because if that was their intention, and once they committed the sin, they had the intention to return to the sin. Right? Likewise with the disbelief. And they've been warned already. A fitting punishment. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا لَا يَرْجُونَ حِسَابًا. Truly, they had no hope of our reckoning. Right? They did not hope for our reckoning, even though they're told about it. They did not seek our reckoning. وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا كِذَّابًا. And they denied our signs with complete denial. كَذَّبُوا is they actively denied, actively on an ongoing basis. كَذَّبُوا, they actively denied and rejected our signs. كِذَّابًا, with false denials. Right? They're skirting the truth. They're skirting the truth, even though they're shown the signs. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا, we'll show them our signs. فِي الْآفَاقِ, on the horizons. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, and within themselves. حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, until it is clear for them that He is the true, He is the real. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ كِتَابًا, and everything we have encompassed in writing. Right? فَذُوقُوا, so experience now, so taste. فَلَن نَزِيدَكُمْ إِلَّا عَذَابًا, for we will not increase you but in punishment. That's, someone hears that, right? Like nobody can speak like that but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ مَفَازًا. And we will complete this surah next week, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, by just touching a little further on some of the description here of hell, and then from verses 31 to 40 on the rewards for those who believe, and some of the qualities mentioned, some of the rewards mentioned, but also some of the qualities mentioned of those who are granted paradise. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses who He is, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a call to take a path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَمَنْ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمُ الْحَقِّ, that is the day that is real. Meaning every day that precedes that day was just a dream in comparison. Like the reality of al-yawm al-haq, the true day, and this day, this is just a dream, it's a glimpse of an eye, it's an illusion, mata'ul ghurur, it just delusion after delusion. It was just a preparation, it was a rehearsal. فَمَنْ شَاءَ اتَّخَذَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ مَآبًا. So whoever seeks, let them take to their Lord a way of return. Okay? And then, so he said, it closes by saying, you have been warned. So we'll look at those verses because there's many reflections, and then look back and look at the key lessons from this surah. It's a very powerful surah, and it opens the final part of the Qur'an. Right? Juz Amma is opened by this really powerful surah, Surat al-Naba, which calls within it a reminder of why you should pay attention to the Qur'an. A reality that every answer you seek, both that people are in difference about, the questions that they're in difference about, in any way, whether you are denying the Qur'an and wondering about it, or in general, what you wonder about is there in the Qur'an. But also what we wonder about within ourselves, if we were true to ourselves and paused to consider, it is there in the Qur'an. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shares these amazing reminders in verses 6 to 16 about His blessings and the signs of His oneness in creation. And then verses 17 onwards about the reality of resurrection and the reality of hell, and then the reality of heaven. Right? To take it seriously. It's a very serious choice, but it's also a very great opportunity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity and steadfastness and uprightness, and make us of those who embrace al-Naba al-Azim, right? The great news, and for it to be a means of eternal rejoicing for us. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Any questions before we close? Of course, I mean, Allah is not a body, right? That there's a trumpet and someone puts their lips on it. Allah is the creator of forms. He has no form. No, but we know that there's a great angel who blows the trumpet, right?
I've heard it before too. I'm just still not completely understanding of the concept of the grave being attached to either the grave being attached to the fire. Is that like theoretical, or is that like you see your place?
No, because in the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-qabru rawdatun min riyad al-jannah, aw hufratun min hufar al-niran." That the grave is either a garden of the gardens of paradise or a pit of the pits of hell, that one experiences in the grave either bliss or torment. The grave either becomes expansive for one. Of course, it's a different dimension. This is not stuff that's taking place in our material world. Right? There's a point of connection between our physical body and the life of the grave, which is in a different dimension. We move to a different dimension of existence. That is connected in a way we don't understand with this world. So we're here, and yet we are in that world, but we are alive now in that world and not in this. So we experience the human body and soul will experience either comfort and bliss and expansiveness and ease in the grave, or the opposite, or depending. There's some people who experience a little of both depending on their state. But then when they come forth from their graves, it's as if when the trumpet is blown, their consciousness, as it were, is erased. Right? It's as if their consciousness is erased, which is why pretty much everybody will come forth bewildered, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. Right? Though there are those who will be under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّ, when there's no shade but His. So it's a day to be in awe of, It's also a day to seek the ultimate joy. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us, because the warning for most people works best, that, the, in Surat al-Hajj, right? That, وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى, you see the people as though drunk. وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى, yet drunk they are not. وَلَكِنَّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيد, but the punishment of Allah is indeed intense. And there's no punishment yet. It's just the realization that it was all true. Right? And those meanings will dawn upon them and people will be in awe. Yet there'll be those who are under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne, and they'll be sheltered from all of that. Right? By one of the great poets of the 20th century, Shaykh Abdurrahman Shawari, he in one of his poems, he put, وَتَرَى الْقَوْمَ سُكَارَى, you see the people of Allah drunk. وَهُمُ لَيْسُوا سُكَارَى, yet drunk they are not. لكن المحبوب أرخى عن محياه الستارة, rather their beloved lifted from themselves the veil. شاهدوا معنى رقيقا, they